All right. So if mindset is 80 to 90% of success, why aren't more people mastering it? Welcome to the Championship Mindset Podcast. I'm Spencer Senn, founder of Freedom and Healing and creator of the I.G.O.A.T mental method. This show is for athletes, coaches, parents, and anyone ready to really be their best and live their best life. Okay, each week you're going to hear real stories, get real advice and tools to make mindset your priority. And as a young top athlete, my career ended in injury, surgeries, addiction, loss of identity. My life spiraled until years later, God placed world class mentors into my path. Now I help others do the same. And this podcast supports that mission. It's part of my calling to upgrade athletes or anyone's minds, starting as early as the age of 10, helping people level up and be their best in sports and in life. My I.G.O.A.T method upgrades the unconscious mind, the software that runs us, the patterns and beliefs that drive us, creating peak performance and lasting transformation. You can catch this podcast live every Friday at 12 p.m. Central on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, and replays will also be available. So today's guest, Coach Brian Tompkins, takes me way back. He had a big impact on me as a young athlete. He was one of my coaches, and he's coached from Homestead High School, UW Milwaukee, Bavarian Club, and Yale. And he hasn't just built champions, he's shaped people for life. So, Coach, it's an honor to have you here. How are you today?
I'm great, Spencer. Thank you so much for having me. I applaud your venture, and I'm looking forward to chatting after close to 40 years it's been. So I'm looking forward to getting reconnected with you.
Man, I'm getting tingles right now because, like, when you said 40 years, and as we were talking, my career ending injury happened, just right at the same time that you were one of my coaches. And that took me on a path that, brought me here. So it's been such a long time. It's great to reconnect. And, before we get into everything and talk through this stuff, because when people only see highlight reels and stuff like that, they miss early chapters of people's lives and, the struggles, the shifts, that kind of stuff, the mindset that got you here, first as a player and then as a coach, back when you were just getting started, first of all, tell everybody where you grew up playing and what was your internal world like?
Well, I was born in England, grew up there, and was there until I turned 21. I taught for a year in London, and then I moved to the US. Playing soccer was something that I loved to do, and I, like a lot of young boys at that age, was determined to be a professional soccer player. I'm in England, so please forgive me if I say football, if I use football and soccer in the same
Okay.
same way. But playing football in this country, I was determined to be a professional player.
Yeah.
And one day, I there was a career night at school, and they had all the tables in the hallway, and you could walk up and down and kind of see which kind of careers you were interested in. But there wasn't one for professional football. And so a teacher said to me, "Why don't you consider something else in sports and be a PE teacher?" And I thought that's not a bad idea, and so that's what I focused on. My internal kind of self at that point was, well, I was a kid that grew up being raised by my grandmother. Um, Not a lot of encouragement for academic pursuits. I mean, it was kind of like it's okay if you do that, but most of in the culture of that time, teenage culture, a lot of people left school at 15,
Mm,
15, 16, became apprentices, went in the army, that kind of thing. And so to
sure.
stay in school, um, I, I kind of had like, it was an unspoken kind of goal to become a teacher. So I kind of persevered. So that was the voice that was in my head more so than about football. It was like I want to be a teacher,
Wow.
because I want to get out of this environment that I grew up in, in a housing, a council estate, which is similar to housing project. I mean, it's not quite. The socioeconomics are not quite as profound, in terms of low income, but it's still not a great environment.
Yeah.
And I was determined to get out of there. So I had a drive to basically get smart enough to go to college and get out of there. And football and sports were never really the primary motivator for me. I mean, it was more a case of get a job, get out of the estate, and then I can't really say I had a long-term vision because I didn't feel qualified to have a long-term vision. I kind of, it was just kind of let's get through this week, let's get through this month, this term at school. Let's get these exams done, and then so it's constantly there's always another hurdle of sorts, but I felt it's better to have little hurdles for me to be jumping than to have no ambition.
Okay.
So in terms of sports, it was kind of my internal voice there was I wanted to be good. I wanted to be a pro.
Okay.
But I can't really say that was a realistic kind of thing. I mean, I was a decent player, but I can't really say it was motivated by some kind of inner drive that was any different than any other kid at that point.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And you touched on some of the thoughts and things that you were going through that you had to maneuver basically, and some of the beliefs. Did you have self-talk that was important to you? I mean, was that a part of getting you through that first stage to get to the next level, from going from, like you said, you're focused on education and being a teacher, and yet as an athlete, and then you became a coach.
Right.
Is a teacher.
Yes. Well, self-talk. I think we all have self-talk constantly. I think that's what I believe. I think a lot of it is self-defeating, though. I think a lot of it is designed to protect us, protect our feelings, protect us from things we might not like. And so I think there's a particular cultural phenomenon in England where people tend to understate their ability. I think in America they typically don't have that problem.
Right.
Americans have got no problem overstating their abilities in a lot of cases, but for me, I think my self-talk was mostly you can do this, but you're always going to have to prove yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
You're always going to, given my family circumstances, I'm a mixed race kid in a predominantly, Caucasian world, and that affects your self-talk for sure. I'm a decent player, but I'm not that great. I'm not a great player. I'm a decent player. So that affects your self-talk. So my self-talk was constantly reshaping itself to the circumstances that I had, because I didn't have resources to embellish my self-talk with action, and to hire a private coach or to
Sure.
seeing a sports psychologist would have been out of the question in those days. But even to go to the gym and things like that, those are all things that now are taken for granted. They weren't part of my self-talk. My self-talk was get through today, enjoy playing, maybe. And I suppose I was counting on luck, I'll catch a break somewhere along the line, and I'll become a great player, and whatever.
Sure.
We often talk about what's your why. What is your why? And my why, particularly when I was younger, is I wanted to teach. I wanted to be a teacher because I think there was some inherent power in that I hadn't experienced as a kid. To control an environment, to be in charge of an environment. I didn't have the benefit of growing up with my parents. So I didn't know. I kind of felt powerless.
Yeah.
I didn't have a role, a familial role that taught me how to have control and how to have power. So I kind of sought that, in terms of teaching, and I felt that by being able to teach and create environments, I could make not only somebody else feel empowered, but it would empower me as well.
Wow,
Um,
that's what you just said is pretty powerful. I mean, it really is. That is, it's profound, really. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about, like you're saying, environment. Environment is critical. And like the way you described it, it could be a blessing, it could not be. It depends on how you handle it. And like I had very little control over that kind of stuff with mine. I just had drive. I needed to work on technical skills. My dream was pro as well. But I overcame a lot, as we were talking about before earlier than when we came on, that drive and that speed and the execution overcame my lack of talent. But one of the things about environment that a lot of people don't realize is whatever environment that we're in, anything that we see, hear, and feel from that environment is feeding us information. Okay. And how in each person processes that information differently, and it goes through a filter, goes into our brain, and then that turns into an action, a thought, an action, and then an experience. This is how we develop patterns, habits, whether they're good, bad. That's how I use the word a lot, program. We become programmed by those influences. And it sounds like you handled yours very well because you knew your why, which a lot of people don't. I struggled for years. What is my why? You know, so that's great advice, first of all, that I wanted to point out. And then the environmental part, maybe you not having the luxury or benefit of having the parents and your grandmother, whatever that environment did, she did very well. You turned out awesome. You affected me, and I know many, many other people. But you have a gift, Brian, to be able to, out of the gate, transfer that information from the environment into a positive. And you named a whole bunch of stuff. That's one of the biggest difficulties that I've seen, not only in my life. Um, to be honest, at one point in my life, a few number of years back, I realized I was the victim of my environment, but I wasn't a victim. All of the things that I labeled as bad, whether it be on or off the field, was part of my story that led me here, where you're sharing your insights, and we're having a reconnection here that gives me chills again. But, you know, so my next question for you in regards to that is, were you ever taught how to do that? Were you ever taught how to manage your mind? Or did you build those muscles the hard way on your own, or did they just like happen?
well, I think it comes back to just a sense of purpose.
Okay.
I feel fortunate that I had a sense of purpose, that I wanted to get to college. I wanted to get through college. I was the first one in our family at that point, to go to college. I had cousins that subsequently went shortly after me, but I was the first one to go to college. Um, and I think that sense of purpose was really, really important to me. Nobody taught me how to, how to have drive, but I think, develop the ability to. I'm not sure if it's an ability or whether it's just luck, but to recognize when people are positively affecting you. Um, and I've had the good fortune. I joke often about falling upwards. I've met so many good people, and in my days in Milwaukee, I was fortunate enough, and this was another eye-opening thing for me. I arrived in Milwaukee and I thought, I'm a pretty good player, so I want to play at the best club, and I'm going to be like a key player at the best club. And
Mhm.
this friend of mine who had nothing to do with soccer said to me, Well, the Bavarian Soccer Club are the best team in not just in the state, but in the region. And they've been doing pretty well without you. So what makes you think that they need you? And that was that was a cold dose of reality that kind of that really resonated with me, because it's kind of like, I think one of the things that I've tried to have is and with varied success is tried to have a sense of humility and
Yeah.
gratitude, for the experiences that I've been afforded, and that's something that I hope I pass on to players. Um, I had some of the best coaches and best influences I've ever been around, and I think subliminally the messaging that I got, we at the Bavarian club, my first coach was Willie Wessels, who's now sadly passed on. But coming out of the English game, it was always we always taught do everything fast, powerful, aggressive, no let up and all of that. And what I found, Spence, was when I got to the Bavarians, I was wound up. I was kind of like this wound up English guy, and here are all these methodical, technical, kind of calm um, coaches that I worked with Willie Wessels. And Willie said, and he said something that really resonates with me to this day. He said, you can be, and this is talking to the whole team. It was a team full of 20 somethings, and his thing was, you can be the best team, you can be great players, you can be aggressive, but you can also be gentlemen. And I thought, this guy's crazy. Initially I thought, why would you want to be? And then more I thought about it, I thought, winning with class is a great feeling. You know, um, accepting defeat with grace is it's a measure of the character of an individual. And so I wasn't taught how to think, or how to use my mind in terms of performance, but more in terms of how you carry yourself, and of course, how you think and how you carry yourself affects how you perform.
And you know what
Um,
you just said, I think was one of the things that just popped in my head. One of the things that affected me the most when you coached me. And by the way, nobody is taught how to think. We're taught what to think. That's part of the problem for everybody, whether they're an athlete or not. But the humility that you had and all of that. I mean, I was a go, 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 drive, 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 perform results and win. And if I didn't, I had a hard time with that. Today, I know that loss helped me be better the next time. It wasn't a negative, it was a positive, and it was necessary. But yeah, go ahead, go keep going.
so it was, I think, uh, as a coach, as a coach, when I consider myself what I call a baby coach, somebody that's just got into the profession. I was fortunate enough to be around guys that, I was you could be, if you wanted to be, you could be completely immersed in like fantastic coaching education. Willie Wessels, Bob Gansler, who is in my mind is the greatest influence on me, of any coach ever. That's not to say there haven't been others, but he's the greatest. Bob Spielman, these are guys that coached at the club, all very different styles.
All
But
Bavarian.
right, of course, yeah, I'm a Bavarian through and through.
When I started, when I went through tryouts back then, I was the kid from the corn. Like, what's this guy doing here? It was awkward. I can't even explain it, but made the
Well,
team.
imagine how I was. I mean, I come in as this black English guy from, who's never seen before, and it's, I'm
Right.
at a German club.
Yeah.
But but in terms of, developing our understanding what my why was, being influenced by those guys, and when I first started, Coach Gansler invited me to join him at Homestead High School,
Yeah.
and it was like being on this magical coaching course. not that he was teaching me necessarily how to coach, but he was showing me behaviors, showing me ways of thinking that were contrary. Well, contrary. They were different. They weren't really contrary. They were different than I was used to.
Yeah.
And I remember one time, Spence, I was with Coach Gansler at I think a UW Milwaukee game, and the team hadn't played very well in the first half, and so we go into the changing room at halftime. I was volunteering and helping out, and I thought he's going to rip them to shreds now because they were playing poorly, and so my English blood, my kind of non-thinking kind of self, because I thought there's only one way to deal with this, and that's like to scream at these guys. So we go in there, and Coach Gansler, the first thing he said was, take a deep breath. And everybody did. And then he just laid everything out. Here's some areas we can be better in, just focus on this, focus on that.
Yeah.
And it was completely contrary to anything I'd ever seen or was anticipating. And so he wasn't saying, hey, this is how you coach. But I was fortunate enough to be in that environment and learn a lesson, absorb a lesson and I think you'll probably recall. I'd be surprised if you ever heard me scream at you guys during a halftime of a game.
I remember it one time.
And that suits my why. My why is I believe in young people and their talent and their ability to improve. I believe in the inherent goodness, if I can put it that way, the inherent goodness of people, and I think if we can tap into that, and not everybody's going to be the same. I understand and accept that, but I really feel like my why is prove myself. Initially it was prove yourself, prove you can coach, prove you can win. And that when you're a baby coach, that's what you do. It's all about you. It's all about, I got to prove I can win. And then after a while, you prove you can win, and then you kind of evolve into the next stage of being a coach. And I think Coach Jerry Yeagley was one that talked about something like this. Jerry Yeagley was at Indiana for many, many years and was the godfather of coaching in the college game. You get to a point where you can win consistently, and whether that's winning championships or just being successful by whatever means you manage, you measure success. And then the last kind of evolution as a coach is to create legacy. So you start out trying to prove yourself, then you prove you can win. You want to prove consistency. You want to be consistently successful, and then you want to make sure that the people that are leaving, the people that are moving on from under your influence or under your umbrella, are good citizens. And it all sounds very noble, but that's kind of like where my why. That's how my why evolved. I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to prove that a kid that grew up under the circumstances that I did can be successful, can manifest some positive things with their life and with their career. And I haven't been successful in everything that I've done. I mean, far from it. But in terms of like my professional career, I think I've always been able to connect with people, been able to try and help them become consistently better, and then leave with a legacy. And my final season at Yale, we didn't have a very good season. It was a poor season by all previous measures. But and the last team dinner we had together, I didn't want to make it about me, and I didn't want to make it about any kind of sadness or whatever. And what I told them was, what I asked them was to always be considerate of other people and express gratitude. That was the message that I wanted to leave them with. And I gave them. I love poetry. and I gave every player on the team a copy of When We Were Very Young by A.A. Milne, which is a little kid's book. But there's a particular poem in there that talks about leaning into the wind when things get difficult, and letting the wind kind of take you, because wherever it takes you is where you want it to go. And that's kind of, so I said in every player's book, I just said lean on the wind, and express gratitude. That is the manifestation of my why.
So I mean, that all of that is gold. I mean, it just is. And you've stood besides, and you've named them. Okay, you stood beside some coaching legends, Olympic level, Bob Gansler. Me playing with Bobby Jr., you as the coach, you had lots of influences, that really, as I hear you talk about this, because I'm learning this stuff for the first time about you, and I'm sure so other people are as well. Um, it was a blessing that they were there and they shaped you. When it comes to mindset, how can you describe when that became, because when we originally connected again after 40 years, you said you're a big mindset guy.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about how they influenced you, how it changed you, how that began to come out of you, where it affected people like me?
Well, I think mindset has become a little bit of a cliche in modern day kind of parlance. I mean, we
Yep.
go back to the days of Carol, when Carol Dweck first developed the concept of mindset. I
Yeah.
go back to a time when and I've mentioned this name to you before, with there was a gentleman called Rob Kehoe,
Yes.
who worked a pilot program with my team at UW Milwaukee, and then went on to become a national authority on team development. And it wasn't called mindset, but that's what it was. That's what it was teaching. It was teaching mindset.
Okay.
Prepare, prepare, practice, perform. Creating unity of purpose, seeing, understanding that there will be obstacles, but obstacles make you better.
Yeah.
It's how you perceive the obstacle. So, am I at the peak of my abilities? Can I improve? Is there any room for me to improve? Of course, there's always room for you to improve. That doesn't mean you'll excel, but it was the focus on mastery as opposed to the focus on outcomes. And that's, to me, that's that's where a lot of teams, coaches, athletes kind of come up short, because if we focus on becoming the best version of whatever it is we've got, whether we're a coach, we're an athlete, whether we're a parent, an administrator, whatever it is, if we if we make our goal mastery and excellence, as opposed to, I've got to get, we've got to win this game,
Mm-hmm.
and you hear coaches talk a lot about, well, we have to win today. Well, how about we focus on, we have to play well today?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how about we have to, and I've been doing a little bit of work with Stratford Town, the semi-pro club here. Nothing major, just helping out, where I can. And the head coach, Paul Davis, and I, have a lot of great conversations. And, we've talked about every soccer game, every football match is 90 minutes, which adds up to 5,400 seconds. So 5,400 seconds, it means that's a lot of moments,
Mm-hmm.
in 90 minutes. And as a player, you'll remember yourself, you're going to have the ball probably, if you're a player that has the ball a lot, you're going to have it for about a minute and a half, during the whole match. So most of your engagement with the ball is going to be in a moment. So it's going to be a tackle, or it's going to be a header. It might be a throw in. It might be a shot, might be a cross. And you may have three or four of those, but there are 5,400 moments available in a game. So let's focus on those moments rather than the outcome, because you can't win it if the kickoff's at 7:30. You can't win the game at 7:30. You can only win it after those 90 minutes are complete. and that's the focus on the journey as opposed to the destination.
Sure.
And to me, that's what mindset is about. It's about, let's focus on what we have control over. Let's focus on what we focus on getting better, recognizing that it's not going to be easy, but things not, just because something's simple doesn't mean it's going to be easy.
Yeah,
You
guide
know,
guide the focus. Like
right.
clients I work with, I'll mention to them the difference between the silver and a gold can just be a thought.
Mhm.
Just like that, it can change somebody's perception. They may have never thought of it that way before. And that's the whole purpose, is what is the focus on? And then how do they perceive it? Yeah, absolutely. Excellent stuff.
Well, I think, when you, a lot of, and this I think is an issue, I mean, I might have to come back and finish off this conversation another time, but I think part of the problem that we see with performance with a lot of athletes is their focus on outcome. I want to be picked for this team. I want to start. If I'm not starting, I don't want to play.
Hmm.
And it's the idea of incremental success. So I will get what I earn through my hard work and application. That's an old-fashioned value nowadays, because a lot of youngsters say, I want to start no matter what, whether I've earned it or not.
Hmm.
Um, and if I don't start, then I'll either quit playing or I'll go to another club.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I use that. That's very as generalizing, but you see that in a lot of spheres of. I mean, even in the professional world, somebody comes out of college and in 6 months they want a pay raise and they want a corner office, and it's like, wait a minute, there are people that have been here 20 years,
Yeah.
or even 5 years, that are
Exactly.
way ahead of you. And I think in a sporting context, it's like the old saying, right? That like everyone wants to go to heaven, but no one wants to pray.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it's kind of, it's. I think that's an indicator of the absence of a mindset that's focused on process rather than outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. As I work with people and I get further into how I'm helping kids, that's my focus, 10 years and up. I'm finding it a very common similarity to what you're saying, but in a negative aspect, in a different negative aspect. Like, what is the most common thing? Fear of failure.
Mm.
Helping them understand fear. Failure is literally is not the opposite of success. It's the path to it. You know, Understanding the perception of that can go a long way, and I see it change kids immediately. Lack of confidence. Okay, confidence
Right.
isn't something that you wait for, it's something that you create. Okay, it's not like Monday morning comes and confidence shows up at your door and you go, okay, now I'm going to go to the gym. You create it inside with your mind. So
It's interesting, Spencer. Interesting you mentioned that, because I've worked at both ends in the college arena. I've worked at both ends of the socioeconomic scale. I worked at a big state school, as you know, in Milwaukee, and I worked at a selective Ivy League school. And the the fear of failure, or the fear of it's the fear of falling off the tightrope. I use the metaphor a lot about the you want your life to be a big wide highway, so that you can veer. Like you were saying, you're going to veer off track sometimes, and sometimes you might even hit the median. you know but
all
you can also pull off and get back on. So you want your life to be a big highway. I think what happens with a lot of high achieving kids, their life isn't a highway, it's a tightrope.
right. Yeah,
And because of pressure, it's self-induced pressure, parental pressure,
that's right.
whatever it may be. um,
Expectations.
right. And so when you're on a tightrope, there's one thing in your mind typically, and
Yeah,
that's don't fall off.
yeah.
And that's not a motivator. That's not a healthy motivator, to not fall off.
No.
And so You'd be surprised. I think people might be surprised that some of the most unconfident people, some of the most unconfident people I've worked with were in the Ivy League environment, because they were governed by fear rather than pursuit of excellence, and the pursuit of excellence was always about something other than just accomplishing their why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was attainment, and it was whether that's attainment employment wise, whether that's making money, whether that's status, whether that's politics, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Right.
And and the kids in Milwaukee, and it was a different era, granted, but they were the roads they were walking on were much wider, and the fear of failure was much less, and that's why we had so much success. We weren't recruiting kids from all over the country and all around the world. We were recruiting kids from Cedarburg and from Whitefish Bay and Shorewood and Wauwatosa, and we were doing. For those that don't know, those are all suburbs of Milwaukee.
Grafton, where I grew up.
Yeah, and but there was no fear of failure there. It was all, we can go there and really be good, and it's, I think mindset is critical, and we've been talking about it, at the club that I'm working at, and trying to figure out the best way to kind of infuse that into what we're doing, because there are cultural traditions, there are cultural kind of ways of doing things and expectations, that vary from country to country and club to club. America is much more progressive in terms of sports psychology. America's much more progressive, much more professional in terms of sports facilities, and things like a physio room, like a training room, things like audio-visual type stuff that high schools have in America that pro clubs don't have here. Well, semi-pro clubs don't have. I mean, it's so there is a cultural kind of aspect to this, but like I said, we're trying to infuse, I guess, some of my my Anglo-American progressive thinking into this kind of into this semi-pro environment, and finding the best way to do it, because we're not assuming that I know the best way.
I mean, none of us do. All we can go by is what we learn, from experts and things, which I'm fortunate enough to be trained by top mindset people in the world. And as simple as this sounds, it starts with the mind, like we've been talking. And one thing that is a very simple way that anyone can understand like this, which is a 100% fact. You were talking about manifestation earlier, okay? What we focus on, we get more of. So
hang on, Spence, somebody's calling me. Just give me 1 second.
Sure.
I seem to have lost your picture temporarily here.
You're still up here.
I can hear you. I just can't see you right now. So.
Okay. Well, I'll keep going then. So, what we focus on, we get more of. All right. So I'm like this morning working with my 9-year-old granddaughter. Okay. If she focuses on negative, what's going to happen? She's going to get more negative. She focuses on positive, what's going to happen? She's going to get more positive. What do you want to focus on? You know what I'm saying? So very simple way for people to start training their brain in mindset is to think just that and understand just that and believe just that. What you focus on, you will get more of. So if you focus on being confident, you're going to get more confidence. If you focus on, I'm not confident, what are you going to get? You're going to get, I'm not confident. And your brain, your unconscious mind is going to, what you focus on, your brain, your mind, your unconscious mind is going to give you more of. Right. So with kids today, all this drama, all this stuff, they get literally addicted, their mind gets programmed to follow that. So what I do is I undo that, get them installed with the right confidence, true grit, mindset, all of this other stuff, overcome mental blocks, clean all of the garbage out, upgrade their beliefs, and eliminate and overcome the limiting beliefs. And it doesn't matter whether they're 10 years old or they're a professional athlete, it's exactly the same thing. So when I look back on growing up, none of that was taught, and still isn't. A lot of it, like you said, is like, uh, because I do one of the tools that I use, and we were talking about this. How do I get it done so easily, quickly, and permanently? One of the tools is hypnosis, speaking to the unconscious mind, feeding it the information. Remember, what we focus on, you get more of. So we give the unconscious mind what you want to focus on. Then we give the logical mind tools. So we have an unconscious mind and a logical mind. We bring those together, and you have instant, true, lasting results. That's one of the reasons I do what I do and why I created this podcast, to get this message out, because people don't know about this, especially kids. And if I'm going to use all of what I thought were negatives but were gifts, I am today, for me to change the world, getting kids everything they need as to how they're perceiving, what they're thinking about, what their focus is on, to make them their best on the field and off. That is my focus. And Michael, the guest from last week, we had one session and it changed his everything. He literally 10x'd his confidence, and it's just there now. And we were talking, he messages me all the time, man, this is unbelievable. This is awesome. Right. The reason I say that about him is you don't need to understand it for it to work.
Right. And something that I think is important along these lines, Spencer, is a couple of simple things. It's like, don't believe everything you think, because people give themselves negative messages. Excuse me. And we are, you know better than I, but we're wired to self-protection, and so we tend to acknowledge danger and difficulty first. And so I tell athletes all the time, don't listen to yourself, talk to yourself. So put the message in there. So instead of saying, oh, I'm not very good at this, just say, this is something I really want to get better at. I'm going to work really hard at this. Now it might sound trite and corny, but the message that's sending to your body, and to your mind and to your spirit and to your presence, your sense of presence,
that's right,
is profound. And so, so it's two simple messages. It's like, don't listen to yourself, talk to yourself, and don't believe everything you think, because especially when you get people that try and intellectualize their feelings, I'm feeling tense, or I'm feeling nervous before a game, I'm feeling nervous. Now they want to intellectualize that. Now it becomes this whole thing that, when really what they need to understand is it's your body telling you that you're ready to compete. It's your body getting prepared to compete. It's not a bad thing.
You're ready. I think you're ready.
Right. Yeah. And I think Coach Gansler used to say, it's no problem having butterflies. You just need to get them all flying in the same direction. That's right. So yeah, I think self-talk is a hugely undervalued aspect of what we do, because it's so much easier. Yeah, right. Yes, indeed. So I mean, so many people will say, "Well, I don't like this," or this, this is boring. Like training, it's like, this is boring. Well, guess what? Every great player that ever played did what you're doing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times.
Right.
That's how they became great. They didn't try and take a shortcut. And that's that mindset of I deserve rather than I will earn. And we generally get what we earn, positive or negative.
Yeah, for sure. So like, the way of self-talk, and man, you've given so many nuggets here. And I'm just honored to have you on and reconnect. And if everybody listening right now, if that didn't hit you somewhere deep, you might want to check out your pulse. What Coach Tompkins has been talking about and just shared, those weren't just answers. I mean, they were mental software upgrades waiting to be installed. Okay. And you may want to replay this and look at it again, because there's a lot of different stuff that we just talked about that was totally profound and spot on. And I can see in you as my ex-coach, all the influence that you've had has been a blessing to you, and the way that you're humble. Your humbleness really speaks to me a lot. And it's amazing how things in life happen. They're part of our blueprint. It's not that they're happening to us. We get to choose how we move through that, positively or negatively. If we look at things as a strength, or we look at things as a weakness, then it is, right? What you focus on, you get more of. I'm not good at this. And what I teach young athletes is, okay, fine. If you're not good at it, you're not good at it yet. Okay. And I teach them to eliminate the word but out of their vocabulary, because it erases everything leading up to the but. So helping people focus on the right stuff, energy, thoughts, feelings, all of that is part of this. And you mentioned a whole bunch of different things that, this is way more than just our brain. There's influences, there's words, there's language, there's experiences, all of this stuff. If we help people train their minds and their brain to focus on what makes them their best, that's what my mission is, whether they're on the field or off, and to help build a better world. So thank you, Brian, so much for being here today. It's great to connect. It means more to me than I can even put into words. Not just because you're this awesome coach, because I mean, I look at you as a friend. I look at you as a mentor of mine from way back, and reconnecting with you in this way is a full circle moment for me. So,
well, I appreciate the opportunity to come on, Spence. I applaud the work you're doing. I think you're venturing into areas that have gone previously untouched, people unexplored, if you will. And I think there's a lot of potential for the kind of work that you're doing, and more power to you for it. I'll just leave you one thought. In terms of what you were saying about making a better world. As I mentioned before, I'm a big poetry fan, and I just think about the line, Walt Whitman's poem, "O Me, O Life," and the last line of that says that you are here, that life exists, an identity, that the powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse.
Wow.
We've all got a verse to contribute, and to the powerful play, whatever your powerful play may be, and yours is very clear. And I wish you nothing but the best and more success. And if there's any way I can help, don't hesitate.
I appreciate it so much, and thank you very much. And to all of you tuning in, if this conversation moved you, inspired you, or lit something up, make sure you subscribe, like, share this episode with someone who needs it. You can follow me on YouTube at Championship Mindset -1, Facebook at Championship Mindset, and on LinkedIn under Spencer Senn. And if you're ready to experience a mindset upgrade yourself, whether you're an athlete, a parent, or just someone who knows there's more inside you, go to freedomandhealing.com and schedule a free discovery call with me. We'll talk about, how the I.G.O.A.T method and advanced mindset mapping can really help break through your blocks, your limiting beliefs, rewire your beliefs, and perform at the highest level in sports and in life. Doesn't matter if you're not an athlete. And until next time, remember, mindset isn't guesswork. It's trainable. And it's the edge that changes everything. We'll see you soon.